Hello, my union family. My name is Sean Thom. I am one of the staff representatives here at CWA 1040. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that I think a lot of us may know a little bit about, but I want to explain to you how that really deals with us in our capacity as shop stewards. All right, so let's dive in here and talk a little bit about confidentiality. And so basically, what is confidentiality? Now, I think we all have a fairly decent understanding of what confidentiality is, right? So, confidentiality is very simply defined as the state of keeping or being kept secret or private. Basically, if I tell you something and I want it to be confidential, I'm going to say, hey, please don't tell anybody I said that. Right? That's confidentiality basically in a nutshell. Now, I urge my stewards and my union people that I work with, when you think about confidentiality, really think about what it means when you talk about patient-doctor confidentiality, attorney-client confidentiality and privileges, right? Those privileges are basically afforded by law, right? You wouldn't want your doctor to go around telling people, what are you have going on medically, just like you wouldn't want your attorney to be going around telling other attorneys, what they're dealing with and what you did as their client, right? So basically, confidentiality of somebody is what we need to do to make sure that our members are safe and that we are not exposing their secrets. All right, so let's talk for a second about how confidentiality applies to your role as a shop steward. All right, so it's really difficult to know what kind of information to share with people. Sometimes you get in conversations, you start getting yourself, into them, and you're like, you find yourself wanting to share, you find yourself wanting to have the conversation continue. So a lot of times you may, share a little bit too much, and it may be difficult for you to understand how much to share. And that's kind of what we're here for today, right? So one thing I have to say is that the ability for you to keep confidential information is really essential to building trust, right? So if you want anybody to trust you in any way, shape, or form, one of the first things you could do is to be able to let them know that you can actually keep what they say to you confidential. And it's one thing saying it, but it's a whole other thing actually doing it. And one of the things that I've learned as a former branch president, shop steward, something that I kind of put into what I do every day is that the trust to keep matters confidential is one of the most important parts of your relationships with both your members as well as management. Trust me, if you are effective at what you're doing and you are building relationships with management, they are going to trust you to not say things. They're going to let you know certain things that are going on. They're going to give you a heads up. They're going to keep you in the loop. But it's really important not to go blab all that stuff out to somebody else because you feel like, you want to be a big person because you know this secret from management, right? Very, very important to building that trust. And the same with members, right? You're not going to your member, you're not taking your members' confidential information and then running around and telling the management or other members, right? So if you really want to build that trust, you have to be able to keep things confidential. All right, so I want you to really think about this because you are actually legally required to keep this information confidential. We're talking about disciplines, grievances, statements, member files, etc. Right? And it's a lot of different things we have to keep confidential. So we really have to ask ourselves before we start speaking on anything, is this something that I should say out loud? Is this something that I should share with this person? Something that I should share in this particular situation? If the answer is no, obviously don't share it. Now, if you're not 100% sure, then ask somebody. So let's talk about some do's and don'ts of confidentiality. So first, what I started when I first started as a shop steward with the DOC, I kind of started to assume that everything that was told to me was confidential. I did not go around sharing what was said to me. And it served me well because it allowed me to build that trust that I mentioned and alluded to earlier. Now, if you're not sure if a member or management would want something shared, ask them. If they don't tell you specifically in your conversation, the best thing you can do is ask them whether or not you can share that. If they say yes, cool, go ahead. But if they say no, then obviously you don't. But the plus side to this is a lot of times you actually build additional trust by asking your members and asking management whether or not they're comfortable with you sharing this information, because that shows that you actually care about them as individuals, you care about their job security, and you care about the consequences of what might happen if this personal information is shared. All right, so definitely ask if you're not sure. Never hurts to ask. If they say yes, ask where and to whom that info can be shared. All right. So if management is telling you about a certain part of your facility that might be closing and they say you can share it, well, ask where I can share that. Can I share that in my email list? Can I share that at my next branch meeting? Can I share that with membership? Can I share that with my branch, my union branch leadership? Right? Who can know about this information? Right? That's going to really allow you to not get yourself in trouble. And one thing I always was blessed to have was that be able to have somebody to reach out to if I was unsure. And even as a shop steward, as a branch president, I was always able to reach out to my staff rep, if I was unsure about whether or not something was confidential. And I would encourage you to do the same. If, as a shop steward, you have your branch leadership. So if you're not sure, ask your branch president, ask your executive vice president, ask the people who are at your facility. If they're not sure whether or not it's confidential, whether or not it can be shared, they'll reach out to your staff rep, and your staff rep will let them know. And a good practice, and I tell all my stewards, is you really want to get things in writing, right? So if management says to you, hey, you can share this information in a verbal conversation, follow up with an email. Hi, so and so, just following up on our conversation we had earlier to make sure that it was okay if I shared this particular information with our members or with my branch leadership. And that way you have it documented in case anything does come back on you. Now you have in writing that you were given permission to speak about this. That can absolutely save you later on down the road. If anybody comes back and says, hey, you know what? We never gave him permission to share that. Now, a lot of things we think about confidentiality, we really think about what we say, but we don't always think about what we interact with and what we handle. So you always have to secure any files and any paperwork. All right. If you're working on something at your desk, whether it's a grievance or anything, right? And you're walking away, the last thing you want to do is leave all that stuff out there in the open. It doesn't matter what facility you work at, you want to make sure that the work that you are doing, your union work, is secure, stays confidential. Because the last thing you want to do is give anybody an advantage in a grievance hearing or anything else along those lines, or to lose the trust of a member or management because you failed to secure paperwork or you failed to secure a file. And I cannot stress how important that is. Now, this is something that I always saw as a teacher in the public school sector, as a school administrator, as a DOC teacher and employee. I would see people walk away from their computers with the screen not locked. So anybody can walk up to that computer and access the information that you have on there. And information could be very important to a case you're working on, to a member. And now, if that information gets out, now you could be in some real trouble. Remember, it's so much easier for somebody just to click it, open it up, put it on a flash drive, and walk away. And I know that may seem far fetched, but you have to remember the facilities and the sites that we work in and the people who we work with, right? Especially management. So always lock your screen before you walk away from your computer. I cannot stress that enough. I do it even when I'm at the local doing work. If I walk away from my computer, I shut my laptop screen. That's the best way you can make sure that what you're working on stays confidential. And this is always something I do in a lot of different aspects of life. But before you get ready to start talking about something, really ask yourself how you would feel in that situation if it were reversed, right? So how would you feel if you were filing a grievance and your shop steward was going to go talk to so and so about that? Really try putting yourself in that member's shoes. That is going to be so helpful to you. Because more often than not, you're automatically going to know the answer and what you should do in all of those situations. So let's talk about some don'ts. All right. Let's talk about some confidentiality don'ts. Now, these lists are not exhaustive. They are just a list of stuff that I've kind of come up with and you spoke with some other people about. So you may have your own stuff to add to there, which is great. But this is huge. Right? And I feel like as a shop steward, this isn't just for confidentiality. This is for everything. It's also a great life motto. Don't assume anything. Don't assume that somebody wants you to share something. Don't assume that it's okay to talk about this. Don't assume anything. I don't care if your member who you're working for is good friends with another member and that other member comes up to you and wants, no, don't assume that it's okay because they know each other or they're friends or shoot, even if they're related, right? Don't assume anything. And it's really important too to make sure that you're not sharing or comparing one member's situation with another. Right. And I'll give you an example of this, right? So don't go and you have an issue popping up with a member, and now you know that you dealt with a similar case recently. So you said, oh, you know what? I know what to do here. I worked on John Smith's issue 2 weeks ago, and this is what John's problem was. This is what we're able to do for John. Don't do that. Treat each new situation like a new one. And yes, you may have an idea on who is actually, what that situation is and what how you're going to go about handling that. Like you may have an idea, but don't compare that with the member. Compare that in your head, right? I feel like this one shouldn't have to be discussed and explained, but I've seen it happen firsthand where sometimes we get a little bit comfortable with management, right? We build some relationships, and you find people discussing these specific issues with confidential information to management without their approval. That is a major, major issue. All right. You should never be talking about a member to management and kind of putting out any confidential information, and then you might be confident, you might think it is confidential, without that express approval from the member. You may have a member say, "Hey, Sean, I'm really struggling with with my physical well-being here. My diabetes, for example, is kicking up, and I need to make sure I have breaks and do what I need to do. Can you please talk with my supervisor about it? Can you please talk with management? Can you please set the meeting for us? And to let them know what this meeting is about." That's fine, right? That's fine in that situation. But if a member is not giving you that specific approval, don't do it. Okay, please. And I mean, this kind of goes along with some of the do's, but do not leave your files, your paperwork, or any important information out for others to see. All right. I put that in there under the don'ts, even though we talked about it in the do's, because I feel like I really had to hammer that home. All right. Nothing is secure unless it's locked. All right. So do not leave your files or paperwork or anything out for others to see. That just doesn't include management. That includes members as well. And if you work in the DOC, that may include some of the incarcerated population that you work with as well, right? So just really keep that in mind, because you never know who is going to try looking at what. And lastly, I feel like we shouldn't be talking about this, but we do talk, and sometimes we do gossip, right? We will talk about, oh, did you hear about what happened over here with so and so? And it's like, oh yeah, well, I heard about that, and this is what's going on with this and this. Just don't. It is your job as a shop steward to be a leader. It is your job as a shop steward to rise above that. It's your job as a shop steward to make sure that your members and management are not engaging in this gossip and that you are the one making sure that this information is not getting out there. Okay. So these are some, real quick do's and don'ts. I'm sure you can probably think of some other things, as well that you would do or not do to maintain a member's confidentiality. But since we're done with these specific instances, I want to actually go on and talk about some scenarios, right? I want you to be able to really kind of think about this confidentiality and really put it into play here. All right, so scenario number one. Here's some background information. A member works in a correctional facility, and there is going to be a power outage that will last all day. They have a medical issue where they must use the bathroom frequently, and they're concerned about there being no power in the bathrooms. They ask you for help to secure special accommodations to work from home that day. What do you do? So in this situation, there's a lot you can do, right? You might go to management and say, hey, Susie Q has bathroom issues, so she needs to go a lot. But you wouldn't be doing it the right way. You would be exposing confidential information, right? So let's look at a possible solution. So in this situation, I would ask that member what specific information about their condition they would like me to share with management. They may not want me to share that they have a medical, you have to use the bathroom a lot, whether it's, a bladder issue or whatever the case is. They may not want me to share that. They may just want to say, hey, we're concerned about using the bathroom when it's dark, when there's no power. Right. So once I know what they want me to share, then it's up to us to really put together a plan with that member about what I'm going to say and how I'm going to approach the supervisor. Right? We do that together. Plans should never be made in isolation and made solo, especially if they involve other people. All right, so put together that plan, see what they're comfortable with sharing, and stick to that plan. You can discuss that issue with management and work to find a way to accommodate that member's needs, right? I mean, it's really simple, and it may seem like something that's really easy and we don't need to talk about this. But imagine if you're in a situation, you didn't talk with a member about it before. You say, all right, cool, I got it, no worries. Now you talk to a supervisor, and without even thinking about it, the supervisor says, okay, cool. So what exactly is wrong with Susie Q? And then you just say, oh, well, she has a bladder problem, blah, blah, blah. Well, now you've just divulged personal medical information to a member supervisor. And you probably did it without even thinking. It just kind of rolled off the tip of your tongue because you know that member's issues because that member trusted to convey that to you. All right. So that's why I think it's so important to have a plan together before you even go in that situation. All right. So that's just, one scenario. Let's look at another one. You kind of have an idea here. If my slide wants to move on. There we go. All right, so scenario number 2. A little bit of background. You're handling a possible disciplinary situation for a member. The member knows of a colleague that was in a similar situation and wants to know specifics on how that issue was handled. What do you do? Now, this is tough, okay? Because let's say you have a couple members who are constantly late to work no matter what, right? Constantly late to work. One member gets written up for it, and then your staff rep works and gets that charge dropped for whatever reason is, and there may be some issues behind those constant latenesses. Now, this other member who knows member one, it's like, hey, how did you get that dropped? How did you do that for that person? What do I need to do to get those same results? How come I can't get that treatment, right? So now you may, in order to, kind of defend yourself, because now they may be saying to you, oh, the union's crap. They don't do anything. You did this for this person, but you guys just show favorites. You're just like management. And believe me, I've heard it, and you're probably going to hear it too, right? You're probably going to hear things just like that from members in your role. I can almost guarantee it, right? So in that situation, tell the member that every particular situation is different, and that you want to put together a plan with them that will focus solely on their needs to ensure that you can help them, right? This lets them know that, hey, every situation is different. And you don't even have to necessarily talk about, well, that's confidential information. I can't discuss that, right? No, you just let them know, hey, everything is different. I want to work with you specifically to put together a plan that works for you and only you. And when you put it like that, the member's not going to be upset that you didn't share information. You'll be like, oh my goodness, they're really thinking about me. They want to make this all about me. They're really looking out for me and my best interest, right? So you kind of kill two birds with one stone there. And you're able to maintain confidentiality of that first member. All right, this is our third and our final scenario. So a member supervisor approaches you with concerns they have with their performance. During the meeting, the supervisor tells you that they know you are close to the member and ask if there's anything going on with them outside of work that is impacting their job performance. What do you do? Now, if you're like me, I have had so many informal conversations with supervisors in my role as a shop steward and a branch president. Right? Supervisor might walk up to you and say, "Hey, how's it going? Do you know if what's going on with so and so? Were they here today? Or are they not? Blah blah blah." And say, "Oh, I don't know." But too often, we get caught up in that because that's just small talk, right? But it's really not small talk. You're directly talking about a member. So while the supervisor or management may want you to think it's small talk, may want you to think it's not a big deal, talk about it, it's just a regular part of the conversation, don't do it. All right. And they may even sometimes honestly, management will do that on purpose. They try catching you off guard. They try seeing information they can get. I know management does it because I've done the same thing to management. Just so you know. Now, one of the possible solutions there, right, is tell the supervisor that your personal relationship with that member is irrelevant to their professional performance. Instead, if you tell the supervisor if they have such an issue, if stuff is going on, let's meet, right? So suggest a meeting with the member, the supervisor, and yourself to discuss any of these professional concerns together, right? So I know these scenarios may seem a little far-fetched, right? They may seem a little far-fetched, and I understand that. But I put these out there because these are things that I have experienced personally in the several years that I've served with CWA as a shop steward and the branch president, and now as a staff rep. These are little things that are going to pop up. And you have to keep in your mind that confidentiality of our members and the conversations that we have. If we do not have that confidentiality, if our members cannot come to us and trust that we are not going to blab what they are telling us to management or to other people, we will not have members for long. We cannot do the work that we do without our members, and we need to have that trust of our members in order to be able to do that. One of the best ways to build trust is to be able to maintain that confidentiality. And again, to close, if you are not sure as to what you should share with management or with other members, ask your branch leadership. If they do not know, they will reach out to the staff rep, and the staff rep will help them in that situation. That's why we have this hierarchy. Use the support systems that you have. We know you are new coming into this. We know there are going to be questions. So ask those questions. The dumbest question is a question that's not asked. All right, so feel free, reach out, let us know what you need, and thank you for taking on this role as a shop steward. It is thankless, but it is so important.